Even the sun goes down, heroes eventually die, horoscopes often lie, and sometimes why. But until they close the curtain, it's him and I, Deep DISCOG Dive. Welcome back to the Deep DISCOG Dive. Today's artist was voted on by many of you a few months ago when I ran the last poll, so thanks to all of you who voted. Even though the poll is closed for the rest of the year, feel free to leave suggestions for artists you'd like me to cover in the comments. Today, we're looking at one of the most acclaimed duos in rap history. One is cooler than a polar bear's toenails, and the other knows that the only thing cooler than being cool is ice cold. There's a joke about the transitive property in there somewhere. I'll think of it eventually. Today, we're looking at OutKast. Let's dive in. OutKast is made up of Andre Benjamin, aka Andre 3000, aka 3 Stacks, aka Dookie Blossom Gain III, and Antoine Patton, aka Big Boy, aka Daddy Fat Sax, aka Sir Lucius Leftfoot. He should name an album after that. They both grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and met in high school in 1992. Initially getting experience from rap battles in their cafeteria, they eventually connected with local producing group Organized Noise. That connection tied them to the Dungeon Family, along with ON and Goody Mob. The same year they met, LaFace Records signed them under the name OutKast. Their first song under that name was a remix of a song done by a group Organized Noise had been producing for, TLC. Looking to break away from the rivers and lanes they were used to, they released their debut single Players Ball in 1993, followed by their debut album. Before talking about this record, let's briefly contextualize the playing field it would soon enter. You see, in the early to mid 90s, the rap game was focused on the West Coast and East Coast, two parts of the US throwing their beef at each other with some of the most acclaimed and publicized artists in the genre's history. And then you've got the South, which was giving us Whoop There It Is. Now, of course, since then, the South has given us some of the most forward-thinking voices in rap, and that might not have happened, or at least in the same way, if it wasn't in part due to OutKast and their debut, Southernplayalisticadillacmuzik. As far as debut records go, this one is excellent. Right from the start, these two had already struck upon a style that was their own. It included rich production inspired by funk and soul, courtesy of Organized Noise, immediately catchy hooks, and the joy that was hearing Andre and Big Boy exchange verses. With some of these songs, you'll be saying, damn, these 19-year-olds are hard as hell. Even though it's the duo at their most unrefined, it's a quality first album that made people from all over take notice at the South's hip-hop scene. Though not always in a positive light. When OutKast won at the 1995 Source Awards, they were greeted by boos, leading to Andre saying,
"Nobody want to hear, but it's like this, the South got something to say, that's all I got to say."
I mean, hey, he was right. So Southern was a big hit, and like many artists who strike it big, they were given more money and creative freedom by their label for their follow-up. The period between Southern and their second album was definitely a time of growth for the two. They became more confident performing live. They wanted to experiment more in the studio. Big Boy had his first child. A trip to Jamaica inspired them to change their image, and inspired Andre to become a vegetarian and stop smoking weed. After spending time in various Atlanta studios, they released ATLiens in August 1996. As opposed to the braggadocio of Southern, ATLiens is radical in how introspective and spacey it is. And I mean spacey in two ways. One, the production this time is minimal compared to Southern, and two, the title. Speaking of, Andre and Big Boy take a big left turn from the lyrical focuses of Southern. Sure, they still talk about life in the South, but it's supplemented with talk of rises to fame, romantic frustrations, personal anxieties, aliens. Nothing on this list stands out. All in total, they show tremendous skill with crafting. I mean, worlds feels too big. They're more like spaces or environments. It's like the duo invited you to chill at their place. Just kick back, relax, shoot the breeze. There's a blood orange in the corner that Andre's been tending to. With two commercially and critically successful records under their belt, the duo were given even more control and freedom with their output, as well as a budget that could only really exist for an album in the 90s. This allowed their recording sessions to essentially morph into jam sessions, and to incorporate more live instrumentation into their songs. The result is Aquemini, released in 1998, and it is often incredible. This thing sports some of the most luscious production on any record from this time. There is no way you can listen to stuff like the title track, West Savannah, The Art of Storytelling Parts 1 and 2, Spodioti Dopalicious, and not marvel at the musicianship demonstrated. Big Boi and Andre are still just as stellar with their lyricism as before, dropping some of the best bars of their entire career, Looking at You, Andre on the title track, though the studio experimentation led them both to experiment with their deliveries. For Andre in particular, he was intent on committing a heinous act in the world of hip-hop, the sin of occasionally singing. I'm sure that won't be an issue going forward though. It's just pure, uncut, unadulterated vibe. Just be here and exist. Put a harmonica in your radio single. It's cool, you dude. Get George Clinton on a track and have him sing She'd Lap Dance on Your Laptop while your laptop's in your lap on loop. Who's gonna stop you? That blood orange in the corner is thriving. Andre, what are you giving that thing? It's their best album. Spoilers, but yeah, it's their best. The same year Aquemini released, Andre and Big Boi bought a studio in Atlanta. The same one where they recorded vocals for that TLC remix. Oh, that's sweet. Andre decided to name it Stankonia as a representation of a funky utopia. They should name an album after that. And name an album after that, they did. After another year in the studio, Stankonia was released on Halloween 2000. If the past two records were OutKast in their laid-back habitat, Stankonia is the most forward and in-your-face they've been since Southern. Think Aquemini, but with more influence pulled from rock and notably pop. This record has some of the first pop hits the duo ever scored, Miss Jackson and So Fresh So Clean. The two come loaded with well-crafted hooks and production that doesn't sacrifice what makes OutKast OutKast. Andre even gets to sing on them both. Man, he keeps doing that singing thing. Okay, that's cool. Another single that ended up underperforming on the charts was B.o.b, or Bombs Over Baghdad. B.o.b might be the perfect microcosm for this record because it is a bop of the highest caliber, but it's also really weird. It's, and I mean this positively, a Frankenstein hybrid of rock, rap, gospel, funk, and its only purpose in life is to get you hyped as hell. They chant power music electric revival at the end. What does that even mean? I don't know, but I want to backflip through bricks when I hear it. Nowadays, B.o.b is considered one of the best songs in their catalog and of the 2000s. The rest of the record is filled with these weird bops, songs that take what OutKast had been doing since ATLiens, put them through a pop lens, and crank them up to 11. As such, even with the weaker tracks, you can still appreciate how far out they go. The guests also do fine work, particularly Atlanta rap newcomer and eventual jewel runner, Killer Mike. It's a damn fine record that proved to the public that rappers could do more than just rap, years before Kanye or Gorillaz or anyone else was doing similar work. A year after stankin' things up, a greatest hits compilation was released. Along with pre-existing songs, it also had 3 new tracks, including fan favorite The Whole World, featuring once again Killer Mike. After that, okay, there's a bit of backstory here. I've hinted at it here and there, but after Stankonia, Andre was starting to feel limited by the genre he was working in, and he began exploring his creative urges outside of OutKast. For instance, he started acting, a bit role in Hollywood Homicide, a brief stint on The Shield, not much else for right now. He also began work on a solo album, one that would be less tied to rap and more inspired by jazz and pop. At the last minute though, OutKast's management told him to hold off, saying it would be a bad career move. But Andre still wanted to release it, so what did they do? Well, easy. Big Boi made his own solo record, and the 2 albums were combined into one double album, Speakerboxxx and The Love Below, released in September 2003. This split led many to believe that the duo were at risk of breaking up, something Big Boi did put to rest on first single The Way You Move.
We never relaxing, OutKast is everlasting, not clashing, not at all.
For the longest time, I thought all the talk about these being glorified solo albums was like just a meme. And I mean, it's not like Andre and Big Boi are completely isolated. They do make contributions on each other's albums. But for the most part, yeah, these are just the first solo albums of Big Boi and Andre put together. So when discussing this album, you basically need to break it down as 2 separate projects. The The first half is Big Boy's Speakerboxxx. Now, I worry that up to this point in the video, I've made Andre out to be the bigger or more talented of the two, but I need to make it clear that OutKast would be literal outcasts were it not for Big Boy. There is a level of workmanlike consistency that has permeated through all of his work thus far, and he really relishes the opportunity to shine on this. Even on his own, he manages to pump out some remarkably catchy music. The Way You Move, Bow Tie, The Rooster, Knowing, War, Church? There's a certain mark of excellence that only comes with being on the Madden 2004 soundtrack, and Church has it. A thoroughly good project, even if it doesn't hit great as much as their past records. The second half is Andre's The Love Below. Whereas Speakerboxxx is Big Boy wanting to be rap's reigning prince, The Love Below is Andre wanting to be Prince. After an intro, opener Love Hater is a total left turn sonically from anything OutKast has ever done, a jazz club pastiche of all things. The following tracks blend that jazziness with a space funk sensibility. Happy Valentine's Day, Spread, the two singles, and then this man puts Prototype right next to She Lives in My Lap, two of the best, most soulful tracks in the OutKast catalog? Who let him do that? My god. And then Farnsworth Bentley and Andre do a skit in British accents, and the rest of it kind of sucks. The back half of the album has some good ideas, but that's all it has. Ideas. Things that, if worked into cohesive and engaging songs, could be special. I'm glad a drum and bass rendition of My Favorite Things from The Sound of Music is on here. I just don't think it needs to be 5 minutes long. What turned some people off from this record was the fact that Andre rarely raps on here. It's nearly all singing. I think what compounded this issue, though, is the fact that when he does drop a verse, it's great, to the point of tantalizing you into wanting more. I don't know, it's still solid as a whole, and Andre's musical daringness here is to be celebrated. When his gambles pay off, they pay off in dividends. The crowning jewel of the record is, of course, Hey Ya, the biggest single on either side and the biggest song in OutKast's career. A jubilantly supreme bop that is actually quite depressing. Like the Snare, you just made the groundbreaking claim that Hey Ya is depressing. How you did that? Well, you know, we put our heads together, we gave it our best shot, and at the end of the day, we figured the best strategy would be to just look at the words and make logical assumptions based off of them. Yeah, it feels like one of the biggest open secrets in modern pop these days, but for anyone who doesn't know, for a pop song, Hey Ya's pretty deep. Andre sings about the fragility and impermanence of love up until the halfway point when he literally says, "Y'all don't wanna hear me, you just wanna dance." And some of these lines are excellent. If what they say is nothing is forever, then what makes, 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 love the exception. All these years later, it still holds up as a phenomenal pop track. A comparison some have made to this album is the Beatles' White Album, another double album that split its sides based on who was writing the songs. Some also claim they're similar in that they reflect growing tensions and confrontations within the group, but I don't think that's 100% accurate. By all accounts, the fact that the White Album is great is a miracle considering the infighting and drama going on within the Beatles at that time. But with Speaker Love, Andre and Big Boy didn't hate each other, they just weren't on the same creative page. No drama, just two souls drifting away creatively. The success of Speaker Love and its singles gave OutKast a certain ubiquity in pop culture that very few acts ever achieve.
It's about the American idea of equal opportunity. And I don't care what the other candidates say. I don't think OutKast is really breaking up. Andre 3000 and Big Boy just cut solo records, that's all.
All right.
Their success culminated in the album earning multiple Grammy wins, including Album of the Year. It was also the last rap album to win that award, but we are not opening that can of worms today. After Speaker Love, they released a passion project film through Universal and HBO, a story about a fictional juke joint in Georgia during the Great Depression. With the film, a companion album of the same name was released. It's a totally acceptable album by the two, even if it does carry over some of the issues from Speaker Love. Big Boy's tracks are consistently good, if nothing super innovative. Andre's are fascinating as experiments, but lacking as songs. There are standouts like Mighty O, The Train, Morris Brown, Call the Law featuring newcomer Janelle Monáe, In Your Dreams with Monáe and Killer Mike. All in total though, it's too long and too bogged down by filler. I did also catch the film Idlewild for this video, and as a collection of vaguely related musical vignettes, it's perfectly fine. Though Andre and Big Boy sharing virtually no screen time didn't help the breakup rumors all that much. But even if Idlewild wasn't on par with the other albums, that's fine. It was basically just a small creative detour on the way to OutKast working on their next studio album. That's it? Yep, Idlewild was the last OutKast studio album, and for reasons I will touch on in a bit, it'll probably end up being their last one ever. But that doesn't mean that the two of them haven't been busy on their own. Let's start with Big Boi by virtue of the fact that there's more to say. He has 3 solo albums to his name, starting with 2010's Sir Lucius Leftfoot. Oh hey, he took my advice. The consensus is that this is his best solo record, and the 2 that followed in 2012 and 2017 are solid. I'm so happy to announce that this statement is something I agree with. There was also the EP he did with indie pop group Fantagram called Big Grams. Not all that remarkable, though there is a good track with Run the Jewels that I recommend. His most high-profile appearance in recent years was during the 2019 Super Bowl with Maroon 5, Travis Scott, and SpongeBob. He did The Way You Move, which was fine, though the line about OutKast being everlasting feels especially hollow when Andre isn't even there. What was he up to? Well, Andre's solo trajectory, much like the trajectory leading up to it, has been varied and eclectic. First off, he has never released a solo album, aside from Love Below. Instead, his musical output has been relegated to guest verses, which I think suits him quite well. Some highlights over the years include John Legend's Green Light,
Let's have a cab and split it. I'm kidding, we both going to where you living.
Beyonce's Party, Anderson .Paak's Come Home, Frank Ocean's Pink Matter, and especially solo reprise. God, what a good verse. His role on Do Ya Thang with Gorillaz and James Murphy.
New word out of my opinion.
I mentioned it during the Gorillaz dive. This is one of the best things he's ever done. The most recent musical project of his has been playing flute in public places. He should name an album after that. Oh wait. When he hasn't been doing music, you might have caught him doing some acting. Semi-Pro, Four Brothers, the Jimi Hendrix biopic All Is By My Side, the recent AMC miniseries Dispatches from Elsewhere, and of course I'd have to give back my millennial card if I didn't at least mention Class of 3000, his series on Cartoon Network. So that's what they've been up to since Idlewild, but there is one last piece that we have yet to shake like a Polaroid picture. In 2014, OutKast reunited for a series of festival dates starting with Coachella. This was great! After nearly a decade away, 3 Stacks and Sir Lucius Leftfoot were coming out of the woodwork to bring back real rap and hip-hop. How did it go? Their headlining slot during Coachella's first weekend was greeted with think pieces. Also, as a disclaimer, the footage from their Coachella performance has basically been wiped, or at the very least I couldn't actually find any of it, so I'll be talking about the Coachella performance but using footage from another festival. Just so you know, their first performance in years was mildly lackluster, let's say, but it was due to a variety of factors, including the crowd, the kind of music OutKast makes, the duo themselves. Big Boi was his usual showman-esque self, doing the typical hyping up and call and responses. Andre, however, well...
Look carefully at the "I really wish I weren't here right now" button.
Yeah, by the first date of their reunion tour, 3000 had kinda mentally checked out. Now, from what I've read at the time, that first show was their least well received, and while these issues did persist going forward, the rest of the tour was fairly successful. In recent years, Andre has spoken frankly about the tour, saying he felt like a sellout for having gone through with it. To me, if there was any hope of a full-blown reunion, this tour diminished it. From all reports since, it seems like the two of them are on good terms, so that's good. It's safe to say that Big Boi will continue doing his big thing for the foreseeable future. For Andre, who the hell knows? One thing is for sure though, based on a recent interview he gave with Rick Rubin, he probably won't be releasing a solo album anytime soon. Though, given the reasons he gave for why, I commend him for recognizing that, and I still look forward to whatever he's gonna do next. If you want to get into OutKast, I recommend ATLiens, Aquemini, and Stankonia to start off with. And if you have a favorite OutKast song, album, or performance, I would love to know what it is in the comments.